Good morning to all our participants. I would like to thank you for sparing some time to be with us today as we launch our first ever webinar brought to you by the Filipino Science Hub. So before we start our program, let me just greet all the mothers and teachers a belated Happy Mother's Day. Thank you for being our second mother in our class group. Sa likod po ng bawat isang guro ay isang ina na umuunawa, nagmamahal at nagmamalasakit sa kanyang mga tinuturuan. So in behalf of the Filipino Science Hub, we would like to greet you a belated Happy Mother's Day. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Marty, a researcher from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and I will be your moderator for today.
Magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat. Ako po si Jeffrey Bunkin. Let me just I think. Okay, ako po si Jeffrey Bunkin. Ako po ay isang Filipino scientist at ako ang founder ng Filipino Science Hub. Unang-una po sa lahat, nagpapasalamat po ako sa lahat ng mga guro na sumuporta dito sa aming initiative. Nakaka-overwhelm po kasi 600 lang po ang slots na kaya namin accommodate today, but we got registration as many as 3,000. So we're learning as we do this. This is the first time that we're delivering an online seminar. So please bear with us, and I hope that you actually enjoy this session. So para po sa inyo na nag-iisip, ano po ba ang Filipino Science Hub? Filipino Science Hub po, it's formerly called Batangas City Science Teachers Hub. So ito po ay isang online platform na aking pinasimulaan noong 2012, nung ako ay nagbabakasyon at dumadalo sa isang mga eskwelahan. So ngayon po, medyo pinalawak po namin ang aming reach at para mas marami po kaming maabot ng mga eskwelahan at mga mag-aaral sa buong Pilipinas. So ano po ba, para saan po ba kami? Ano po ang gusto namin gawin? So our group our group intends to promote the cultures of science and technology, mathematics and engineering among students in the Philippines. And wala po kaming maisip na mas effective na way or pathway for us to reach the students kung hindi po kami dadaan sa inyong mga guro. Kayo po ang aming mga frontliners. So makakaasa po kayo na sa mumunti namin mga paraan, gagawin po namin ang lahat para po mas mapaglingkuran po namin kayo at matulungan po namin kayong mga guro para po mas ma-enhance natin ang ating talent pool sa Pilipinas sa STEM areas. Gusto ko lang din pong linawin, kami po ay mga volunteers. So we're doing this during our spare time from our own independent careers. But I have to say that the current team behind PhilSci Hub boasts in its multitude of expertise. Meron po kaming mga eksperto na nakapag-aral at nagpakadalubhasa sa iba't ibang mga larangan, mapa sa Pilipinas man po, at karamihan po sa amin ay mga nakapag-aral sa ibang bansa. Lagpas kalahati po sa aming grupo ay nakatira ngayon dito sa Amerika at nasa Europa. Yun po, kami po yung mga Pilipinong scientists at mga educators na gusto din pong maglingkod sa inyo sa aming mga mumunting pamamaraan. So, yun po, sana po sa pagtatapos ng session na ito ay masagutan po ninyo yung online form para po matutunan namin, para malaman namin kung how we're doing for us to be able to improve our content creation and also our way of delivering. At baka po nagtataka kayo bakit it's a science page. Bakit behavioral sciences yung gusto namin i-deliver? So the reason behind it is we're in the middle of a pandemic, and bago po tayo bumalik sa mga eskwelahan at turuan natin ng science, technology, engineering, or mathematics ang ating mga estudyante, may mga baon po silang experiences at mga nararamdaman galing sa pandemyang ito. Apektuhan, may mga namatayan, may mga natakot kasi nawalan ng kakayahan na kumita at nakaranas ng hirap. So ito po yung ituturo sa atin ng ekspertong ating inimbitahan, si Prof. Hindi ko unahan si Marty. So sana po maihanda namin maihanda po namin kayo para ma-welcome natin ng maayos ang ating mga estudyante. At yun lang po. Asahan po ninyo marami pa po itong kasunod. Salamat po.
Ayan. Thank you, Kuya Jeff, for that wonderful introduction about our page and our group. And now to start our webinar, it is my honor to introduce to you our speaker for today, Professor John Raymund Almeda. John got his BA Communication Arts degree cum laude at UP Los Baños and his master's in Organizational Behavior at London School of Economics. He also got an alumnus distinction from the London School of Economics last 2019. At present, he is a bank officer at the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and a part-time faculty member at the De La Salle University, where he is practicing his expertise in behavioral science. He also served as a consultant in 2008 to the Philippine Sports Institute. In his spare time, John loves to sing and write, and he also plays a lot of sports. Just a gentle reminder lang po ulit, pwede pong maki-mute natin yung ating mga mic and also paki-off po yung mga videos para hindi po tumaas yung bandwidth natin ang magkaroon ng lag sa presentation. So if you don't know how to mute or turn off your video, it's in the upper right of your screen, yung tatlong dots po. Just click that and you will have an option to unmute and unshare your videos. Okay? So for today, John will be delivering this webinar entitled Rising Above Learning Inertia, an exploratory session on rekindling mindfulness and strategies for educators amid crisis. Dear participants, I now give the floor to Professor John Almeda. Take it away, Kuya John.
Hello. Hi, thank you. Thank you very much, Marty. Hi, everyone. Well, for those of you who are coming from the Visayas region, maayong buntag sa inyong tanan. And I hail, by the way, from the province of Albay, particularly Legazpi City. So I greet everybody else, marhay na aga sa Indogabos. And probably, yeah, thank you, Jeff, for clarifying earlier that you're from the United States right now because you greeted everybody else as good evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow educators, today we are about to learn Rising Above Learning Inertia. And actually, this is pretty interesting because everyone has the tendency to be on like a hiatus or like a long pause for this part because we have this particular pandemic and there is a tendency for us to be anxious. And you know, last night I actually got to read also the post from the Deputy Ed Secretary saying that it's but necessary for us already to resume classes, although there's a massive protest that is being received right now because a lot of people are saying that they are not really ready for virtual education or online classes, and a lot of parents are also trying to assert that that health is more important, that safety is more important instead of going to the class and learning because it can wait. So there are different perspectives that we have to consider right now, and we just have to wait. And we need to trust our leaders. They can indeed deliver, and they are in the hearing side, meaning they're trying to hear out as much concerns as we raise. And you know, we have representatives also in the House of Representatives and as well as in the Senate, and all our voices are being represented. And we think that the social media is also here because it represents voice. So Marty said that yes, our topic is indeed rising above learning inertia. And we will be discussing, as you can see on the slide here, these three main bullets, which are also, you know, in effect as the objectives that we will have to meet for today. So in this particular webinar, we are expected to know how to align educational perspectives, habits, and goals, because there are different angles that we need to see right here. The second one is probably knowing snippet of the fundamentals and strategies of mindful and holistic teaching. This is not going to be, you know, we're not giving you absolute answers here because we're talking about human behavior. And when we talk about human behavior, it talks about a lot of causalities. It talks about a lot of factors, myriad and vast amount of factors that we need to consider. And it's but inevitable for us to think about something, to think about, you know, how do we address these factors? And we need to go back to our sense again. And sometimes, you know, people are doing the TikTok because it keeps them sane. But we need to be on track. We need not to lose that track. because we have our goal, we have our vision as educators, and we need to be mindful and ensure that there is, of course, holistic teaching and not just about the technicalities of it all. Like, you teach science, you teach technology, you teach engineering, or you teach mathematics. I teach people management, and I teach organizational behavior as well. The third objective is for us to be able to challenge some of the stereotypes and biases to improve teaching techniques and create more impact in students. This is necessary for us because there are just a lot of influences that you need to consider. From the time that you have been conscious about what's happening in the world, from the time that your mothers and your fathers or your aunties or your titos have actually influenced you into so many things while you're watching TV at home, or when you went to your churches, your church members probably also gave you certain realities, and we went to school, and definitely there are a lot of things that are just influencing our thoughts and our perspectives. But sometimes it gives us some cognitive shortcuts, meaning there is no more a huge amount of effort in trying to think or decide on things, because we are indulging in cognitive shortcuts, meaning we're not really thinking at all that deeply, because it's so easy for us to say that, the causality of things, this might have been caused by a certain thing because of the stereotypes and biases. And this is inevitable because we're just an element in that bigger culture, in the bigger culture of your school, in the bigger culture of your province, in the bigger culture of the nation. And so we need to find the spot, and you need to find how relevant you are in this particular vast world. Next slide, please. We start with our competency-based approach. We talk about knowledge and skills. We talk about being educators, and sometimes, having graduated with an education degree, or probably becoming a board top-notcher, or becoming a principal, or earning a doctorate degree, all these things, these actually make us or send us a message that probably this is already the end, and I'm just so ready to share. I'm just so ready to be the guru. And this is usually our tendency. I use the character here, as you can see, this is Dora the Explorer, because Dora is just known to be this kid who is not afraid of certain challenges. She has already gone places, but she has not stopped yet, because she keeps on searching. She keeps on, learning, and she keeps on testing her abilities. She keeps on going beyond her limitations. And this is actually the very attribute or characteristic that we want in each of us, even as educators. Now, rising above learning inertia, as you know the definition of inertia, right? It's like we're not moving because we have already thought that we have already reached the peak of success. So if you start actually with the competency-based approach, we need to start with a learner level first, right? We need to be supervised. There are some senior peers in the educational sector, probably our senior advisor or senior teacher, senior professor, or even the principal, or your personal coach or your personal mentor, and we need to be guided. This stage of our competency-based approach to being educators, this actually talks about learning the fundamentals, learning the basic elements. What does it mean when you need to put up a visual aid? What does it mean, or how do you effectively teach science? And this is so complicated. How do you teach mathematics wherein it's all numbers, it's all symbols, it's all letters? It's just so hard, right? It becomes more and more complex. But, as learners, we need to just recognize that we are learning, that we need to have first the building blocks of becoming who we want to become, like a good educator. The second level, would be becoming competent. So at an acceptable level, you can already move around. You can already probably do effective teaching. You can already face a certain crowd, face a certain public, especially students. You can already convey numbers, convey sciences, convey technology, or convey engineering in a very effective way. However, in more pressure-oriented situations, you would still be needing some just a bit of supervision from your senior peers. But that is already a competent level because you have already achieved a certain acceptable degree or acceptable tier or level of becoming a competent educator. The third level of that, click please, would be the proficient level. This is now the stage when you become more consistent about becoming unsupervised. You now become more consistent in terms of significant contributions to your school, significant impact on your students, or coming up with good visual aids, coming up with good learning materials, unsupervised. And that is becoming proficient in that particular competence. And when you have already reached that level, click please. This is now what we are saying expert. I hope you don't mind when I'm saying click please, because I'm talking to JP, who is from currently in Finland right now. Just see that we're all over the world. And because there was some technical difficulty last night, and I'm trying to access mine via my phone, so that I don't have access to my PowerPoint. I hope you don't mind. And when you have already reached that expert level, click please, the very descriptor for that is when you can already teach, you can already coach, you can already mentor. So coming from learner, competent, and you now become proficient, less supervised person, you now become an expert. The very field of expertise is already in you, and you can already do some knowledge transfer or technology transfer. You can already coach people. You already have that ability to customize your language to the people that you are teaching or to the people that you are imparting your knowledge to. However, it becomes an inertia. So this is where inertia comes in, because it seems like there is already some hiatus, like a long sleep. And there's always a question, so what's next? I'm already an expert. It's like finishing a doctorate degree, but what's going to be the next? You know what? We cannot really claim that we have the monopoly of knowledge. Even if, for example, organizational behavior is my expertise or people management, I could not claim that I already know everything. In as much as, for example, STEM teachers even earn this doctorate degree for their particular fields of expertise, cannot just easily claim that they're already experts and that there is no more room for improvement. Of course, learning should be continuous, right? By the way, as you can see, there are actually links here underneath the slide. You can, in fact, consult those for the competency-based approach. But the other one by Demieux, Dye, and Hallenbach, it actually talks about learning agility, which is the next step. Click, please. Learning agility is about, exactly, that's something that is infinite. You do not stop learning. You do not just say, I want to give up, or this is already the best, or I already know everything. Let me just continue teaching, or let me just continue passing it on to people. By the way, towards the end of this presentation, of course, you may ask in Filipino. Please do not mind my language. This is the language that I'm most comfortable with. But of course, I understand Filipino. I still do speak Filipino, and especially Bicol. You can also message us in Bicol. I definitely could understand those questions. So please hold your horses. I know probably on this particular side, you already have a lot of questions in your mind. You already must be very, very interested in a lot of things. But what we are trying to say here is that this is very timely. Look at this very, very virtue that we are flashing in here. It's humility. Humility is gone, right? Or seems to be dissipating in our current context. Even if you take a look at the leadership here in the Philippines, there are just a lot of political feuds, a lot of political fights, and it's just about humility that we need to rekindle. How do we find that again? And this is actually a very religious example here that I'm showing you here. It's Jesus Christ washing of the feet of his apostles or disciples, meaning his students. So you see that? Teachers or educators can also learn from students. And it's about humility. Are we humble enough to accept that? I'm pretty sure that you have probably also experienced certain instances where a certain student has been challenging your thoughts, has been challenging whatever you're teaching at. And sometimes, because of our ego, sometimes because of our expertise, we think that, the students don't have any right at all to question our expertise or what we have been learning and mastering so far all throughout the years. Sometimes it just takes some tinge of humility, virtue in us to go on and on. Next slide, please. Now, this is a quote that I formed, and this is a picture of me when I was in University of the Philippines doing some career talk, and yeah, to some educators as well, and to some students. Sometimes you're a teacher, yes, and sometimes you're a learner, and you never, never, ever end your journey to becoming a learner. But humility spins the wheel. Who tells you or who forces you? And sometimes it's just so hard for us to accept, to be taught, to receive constructive feedback, to receive some criticism, even from students, even from our fellow teachers, especially if we are already senior teachers. Sometimes we have that reservation of welcoming feedback. But you know, it's just about being humble. This is not a virtue, or this is not a certain value of spiritual people. No, it's in fact something that every person should have, because we're all learning. Nobody has ever expected that this pandemic would ever happen, right? And everyone is just, you know, fighting over the field, like how to address these things. Yeah, I hope you could mute the microphones. Hello? Yeah, I'm hearing Tina from a certain province. But this is just to say that, you know, humility is so rare right now. And to be reminded that we are people, we're human beings, and we are all have the tendency to commit mistakes, or we have the tendency to have gaps. And these gaps have to be bridged. These gaps need to be addressed, because it's infinite rebirthing. It's like you're a phoenix. You're dead for some time, and then you are born again. I'm not talking about the born again sect, but you are born again in terms of your intellectual potential or your learning capacity, because you never end or you never stop learning. Next slide, please. But in terms of, you know, it's so hard. You know, it's all easier said than done, of course. But science is also teaching us to apply scientific method. We are teaching scientific method, right, to our students. Why don't we apply that also to ourselves? And why not apply scientific method, right, to ourselves, like applying 3 lenses. These 3 lenses, as you can see, I've put there the reference. It's from Gyan Nagpal, that he is a talent economist, and he conferred me this certification. It's a global certification, so I am also a certified talent economist. He uses 3 lenses for us to be scientific, for us to become more aware of our approach in life before we even get to decide. And this is in fact also discussing our first objective for this webinar, how to realign our educational perspectives or our mindset as educators, and the habits that we have. Do we need to revisit them? And the goals that we need to chart or rechart. And we use 3 lenses. So the first lens is in fact what we call internal. An internal lens talks about yourself. It's like introspection. If you've encountered ever psychology class, it's called introspection. It's becoming humble because it's like you're auditing yourself. You want to become more aware of how you're doing things. It's like more on self-awareness. And this is our very descriptor for this. It refers to becoming self-aware. And later on, I will show to you Dojo Harry's window, because it's actually depicting a window. And it shows us that we have to be humble about knowing ourselves. You know, sometimes you encounter these sayings that, I don't care about people talking about me. I know myself better. But you know what? What they are talking about you actually matters too. And you need to be aware of, well, not everything. Well, we have a saying that, you know, what you don't know will hurt you, right? But we have to be more aware of what's going on in our environment. But internal lens is more on looking into your knowledge. Am I knowledgeable enough as an educator? Looking into your skills, right? Do I have enough skills to teach? Or do I have the proper disposition in life? Do I teach because I want to inspire people? I want to impart knowledge? So it's also checking our intentions, checking our agenda, our personal agenda. Now, the second lens is in fact external. So this is trying to be aware of our environment, right? It refers to environmental awareness. What's going on outside? Right now, we are at the confines of our homes, our respective homes, and we're saying that, you know, what's happening outside is, of course, the very crisis that we are all in, and we do not know what's going to happen. I'm not sure if the president has already announced what's going to happen in terms of lifting ECQ or still going on with GCQ, because we're having this webinar, so I'm not pretty much aware of what's going on at the very time that we're all talking and conversing. But what the external environment teaches us is that we have to be ready, right? No one has ever expected that we will be in the pandemic, right? And we do not know how to cope with this. And suddenly we are all being tested. Suddenly all jobs before, what's funny is that most of the companies before have been asserting that, we cannot really go digital. Some works could not really be brought home and you work from home. And especially for the government sector, they have restrictions in terms of attendance, etc., etc. However, look at us right now. Suddenly we're all home. We're all at home. We're all working from home. And there is so much transition that is going on. What the external environment, so we're trying to live beyond the Philippines, or in some aspects of our metropolis, of our centers, probably in your ciudades or mga bayan, digitalization is already happening. We are already in the era of the fourth industrial revolution, and we're talking about digitalization. Yes, right before that, yeah, we came to becoming automated. But what does digitalization mean? It's not just about technology, because that is a very limited perspective of what digital era means. Digitalization, yes, artificial intelligence is included there, but it's not just about technology. It talks about the entire culture. Are we ready for it? It talks about the structures and the systems that are present in our society. It also talks about our capabilities. Are we even ready to transition to that particular era, right? And it talks about all these systems and the structures. And according to McKinsey, this is actually based on McKinsey model. You can just Google it up, scholar.google.com. McKinsey is known to influence people in terms of looking at things. And in terms of looking at the digital era that we're all here right now, we cannot just be limited to technology. The third lens that we have to look through is aspirational. What do we want? Okay, right now that you know yourself better, right? You know what you have, you know your capacities, you know the knowledge and skills that you have, you know your dispositions in life, and you know what's happening outside, you know the external environment, you know what's outside of the Philippines, because social media has been very effective in trying to bring all the news or the information that we just need. One Google, one click on Google, it's just all there. It's become very, very easy, right? This is the very reason why, some the snail mail or the post people have lost some of their jobs because of technology, because of email, or and other jobs. Right now, if you could imagine Amazon is it's largest logistical company right now in the whole wide world, and even Jeff Bezos is the richest, as you know, he's already topped even Bill Gates. And you could even see even in the inventory shop or in the stocks room of Amazon, it's already a robot that's operating, doing all these inventory, doing all the listing of the products and placing all the products in their shelves, replacing human beings. But is this actually the future that we're seeing? Is this what we want to become? As this particular lens is actually telling us, it refers to our future. It's awareness of our future. What do we want to become in the near future, in 5 to 6 years? Do you see yourselves still as educators? Do you see yourselves going abroad? We do not know. Of course, you chart your own careers, and I hope it's for your betterment. And this is about charting our direction. Where do we now go, right? What is the future of education, for example? If we lift ECQ on the 15th and we all go back on the 18th, what's going to happen? In the rural areas, they don't have laptops. Students don't have internet connections. It's just all going to be different. It's all going to be difficult. And we have these challenges. Our journey is just filled with challenges. And how do we cope, right? And we need help. We need help from our leaders. We need help from our national government. We need help from our Department of Education. We need help from some non-government organizations. We need help from our parents specifically or significantly, because these are minor. still minors, right? Up to 18. I'm not sure with senior high school, though maybe some of you guys are already 19 or 20. But aspirational lens is also trying to become aware of where do we want to go. So it's actually becoming more conscious and becoming more mindful that this is my target in 5 to 6 years from now. And I make sure that all the activities that I'm doing will actually be aligned with that particular target in the future. So next slide, please. We now focus with internal lens. Let's talk about more about this Joe Harris window. Joe Harris window, it's called Joe Harry because it's named after two psychologists named Joseph and Harry. That's why it's called Joe Harris window. And next, please, or click. Yeah, so it's being called as a window because it looks like a window. You know, the traditional window with 4 quadrants. You know, we have 4 quadrants here, and you're looking at some descriptors. By the way, you can also check out the link that is right underneath Einstein that actually also leads you to a reference on Joe Harris window. But you can actually look it up, and even in Google, it shows you a lot of references in terms of Joe Harris window. But what does Joe Harris window teach us all? How do you know about yourself? How do you know that you are really aware about what's happening in yourself, or what's happening about you, or how you are being looked upon by other people, right? The first quadrant on the upper left is called the open quadrant, or the open block of this particular Joe Harris window. And it talks about what is known to you and what is known to others. For example, your credentials. People know that you are a math teacher. That is known to you, and that is also known to others, right? People know that you are kind. And you also know that you are kind to people, right? And that is open. That is the open quadrant. And the next one on your right is the blind one. It refers to the things that are known by you, but seen and acknowledged by others. And this is kind of risky, right? People are talking about you, for example. Oh, you know what, that person doesn't know this. And you do not know that these people are actually talking about you. That is unknown to yourself, but that is known to others. And sometimes what you do not know what really won't hurt you, right? So maybe sometimes you don't mind, but sometimes it also helps. The lower and left quadrant talks about the hidden quadrant. It refers to the things that are known by you, but unknown by others. You know, for example, about your childhood or your most embarrassing moments. Probably you cheated once also when you were in high school. And people just do not know about it. Now, let me just share with you just a quick story. I wasn't really very, very good in math back in high school, and people seemed to know about that, and people knew that, you know, I wasn't cheating. You know, this is already a part of my confession. But you know what I did back in high school? I had some. Of course, we all have our imperfections, right? Because when I was in high school, I had this particular experience where when I was in 3rd year, by the way. So I've never was included in the top 10. So on my 3rd year, because I was already too frustrated, I wanted to be included in the top 10 because I want to also honor my parents during that time. I had this particular código somewhere on my body, but out of nervousness, I wasn't able to make use of that código because I was just too guilty about it. Because of all these, you know, by the way, I had my high school in St. Raphael Academy in Legazpi City. So since it's a Catholic school, it actually taught me all of these virtues of honesty, of integrity, etc., etc. So I got so nervous during that time. And what I did was, okay, I wasn't able to look at the código. So I still did not make it to my top 10. And when I became 4th year, I told myself, I want to commit. I will never do any código in my life because I really want to be included in the top 10. And that's what I did. And, you know, I was too bad in math, right? But I really studied well. I would sleep around 2 a.m. and probably wake up around 4 a.m. So I would just have, you know, 2 hours of sleep. And I would wake up still studying. And that was the very time that I was the top in my mathematics exam. And yeah, I graduated as the top of the class. Ha 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 ha. That's a little bit of bragging. So yeah, so enough of that. Okay, now let's go. So yeah, okay, going back to that particular hidden quadrant, you know, things that are known by you, I knew for the fact that I kind of had that código, but not everybody knew about that. So that was the hidden part. I was wearing a mask. It's similar to becoming an educator, right? Sometimes you are too confident. You are projecting that you're too confident about your field. And sometimes you're being asked by your students, you're being challenged. And sometimes, you try to rephrase or paraphrase your statements and making them believe that you really know about it, but you know it to yourself that you do not know, but people do not know that you do not know about it. So that is the hidden. And the fourth quadrant here, lower right, is the unknown, something that is not known to you, and also not known to other people. It could actually be, why are you manifesting, such joy in your current age? And you do not know about that. Probably you will just say that, maybe it's about, the food that I just have eaten, or probably it's about the weather, a sunny day, that's why I'm happy, and you do not know about that. What is unknown to you? Probably because you have a very good childhood, and that is not yet known to you unless you consult probably your clinical psychologist, wherein, there's some kind of tracking into your childhood history. And other people also do not know that. Other people do not know about your childhood stories. And this is Joe Harris' window. And almost, it has almost equal percentage of weight. And we need to consider what other people are also thinking about us. And sometimes, it's so hard for us to receive feedback because we already, have the tendency to be full of ourselves, and we believe that, I've already studied this well, I'm a master on this one, I've become a doctorate on this one, I've achieved a doctorate on this one, so I'm very, very confident. But it takes really some humility in order for us to listen to other people's perspective as well. Next slide, please. The next lens, now we focus on the next lens, which is on external. It's about environmental awareness in digital era. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, right? Unless, of course, you are what do you call it? A manghuhula, a fortune teller, or like a seer. Yeah, clairvoyant, or like a seer. When in Greek mythology, I was referring to that. But we have this particular VUCA concept. That VUCA concept is what we call volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Volatile meaning, we do not know the gravity of the things that are happening. We do not know how speedy these things are actually moving. Volatile, they keep on changing, they keep on differing, and they keep on swerving. And we do not know the directions that are confronting us. Uncertain probably because we're not consulted about what's going to happen in the future. And who has control of the future? It could be some people that are unknown, like, for example, the cryptocurrency or Bitcoins. Who actually knows? Who controls them, right? C is for complexity. Everything is just already very, very complex right now. It's all interlinked. It's all interdependent. There is no direct causality. Like, this particular thing would be affecting this behavior. And we do not know whether that is the relationship, a causal relationship. For example, is it your math teacher that made you perform really well in terms of your math subject? There is no assurance for that, right? This is why there is just so much complexity, and you need to find out the attribution. Where do you now attribute your success as a student? Is it going to be your teacher? Is it going to be your learning environment? Is it going to be your classmate? Is it going to be your parents who also always prepare your food or gives you allowances, etc.? A lot of these factors need to be considered. And A is for ambiguity, right? We do not know what a particular statement, a policy, or a program would be leading to. Sometimes there are two meanings. Sometimes the statements, for example, from Depth Ed would have various meanings or even two meanings. This is what ambiguity is all about. We do not know the entire effect on us. We do not know the very definition of what is confronting us. And this is the very question to all of us. But the very secret for us to address this particular problem on certainty or uncertainty is when we have a stake or we have a buy-in in the particular change that is to come. Just imagine this. For example, the K-12, right? Before it was even introduced to all the teachers, were we actually aware that it would happen? Was there enough consultation about this? I heard there were a lot of consultations done, but there are also some groups that are saying, oh, we were never consulted. But it has to undergo some kind of investigation in order for us to really figure whether that was done or not. But serving as a voice or considering the voice of people is really very important in order for us not to be questioning about what's going to happen in the future. So we now focus on the aspirational lens. You have already considered what you know, and that is internal lens. You now know what is happening outside, right? By the way, aspirational lens is about something that you would like to hope for and something that other organizations are actually telling you to become. If I may share, there is this particular set of skills that has already been charted by the World Economic Forum for 2020 onwards, and they're saying that most of professional people, so regardless whether you are an educator or a corporate person, we need to have the digital agility skills, meaning we need to embody in ourselves and we need to keep on training in order for us to be abreast of the technology. We need to cope with the changing times, and these are just transitioning exponentially, something unimaginable. And sometimes, we become very, very anxious in trying to control these things. What am I going to be in the future? World Economic Forum also tells us that, you know what, with all these anxiety that is going on, because everything is, in the VUCA world, so this is now the word of mouth, the VUCA world, the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, it is necessary for us to nurture and develop emotional intelligence. That is according to the World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum also tells us that we need to be in control of our emotions. We need not to be reactive. We need to wear different hats. Sometimes it's so easy for us to be reactive, becoming emotional towards things, especially, some other people are actually saying that Filipinos are very emotional people, probably because we're so family oriented or clannish. And we have learned that a lot from our elders. And we tend to become, I'm not happy with this particular decision. I'm not happy with this particular policy that's being implemented right now. Or we become optimistic. I think this will bring something good. Or we also become a devil's advocate. Let's consider first the risks of this decision before we come on to that. That is a black hat, right? That is wearing something like a devil's advocate, but you are just ensuring that the dangers and the risks are already being considered before implementing a certain policy or program. Or we can actually choose to become factual people as well. Before we even get to react, let's know first the facts. Why is ECQ being lifted? Why are we turning our educational system to becoming virtual already? What are the facts? Are we ready? Do we have the systems in place? Do we have a good structure for this? Do we have the right capability for this? Or is our culture even ready for this? There are just a lot of considerations we have to make. And I already mentioned that earlier, that this is according to McKinsey. But when we chart our goals, click please, there are just a lot of our directions, right? There are a lot of directions that we need to consider. Influences from your parents. Hey, you know what? There's no future in becoming an educator. You have fewer salaries there. Better become a policeman instead. Better become a soldier instead. Or better become or venture the medical industry instead. So there are just a lot of influences. And you also ask your peers. And some of your, for example, some of your peers are or best friends or circles of friends in the teaching industry also telling you, hey, you know what, they have really good salaries when you go to America, and they need a lot of teachers. Canada also needs a lot of teachers, and all of these things. And charting your goals is just so hard. But when you talk about aspirational lens, you talk about, where do we go from here, to borrow it from the song. But do I have the motivation towards that particular direction? So we now have a motivational spectrum. You may be amotivated, or you may become very intrinsically motivated. And Gagne in DC in 2005 has actually presented us this motivational spectrum. So it's different. We have different degrees of motivation. Some people would not like to regulate their behaviors because they're not just interested. So they don't want to go. And you could actually refer this to yourself as well. Like, you're now being presented with or virtual education, online course, and you're not ready for it. So you're not motivated, right? You don't have any motivation. So it's called amotivation. You're amotivated towards it. But the thing here is, because the principal is saying, hey, you need to go virtual. We need to all go virtual. This is your motivation. You regulate your behavior because you're scared of the punishment. Or it could be the other way around. Oh, I'm going to be giving rewards for those teachers who will try to translate all their educational or learning materials into something virtual, something that is recorded, something online, because there is a reward, right? And that could be your motivation. Or, and this is in particular, the introjection, as you can see in this model of the motivational spectrum. Or you now have the autonomy, meaning you don't have to be told whether you're going to be converting your learning materials into something virtual, because you know for a fact this is important. This is important because the times call for it this already, because there's no other way. Otherwise, we will all be, subjected to infections when we go back to our schools. Although some of the schools still prefer face-to-face discussions, and it is okay, but strictly implementing social distancing. This is, in fact, one of the practices now being adopted by De La Salle University system, where I'm teaching. And we're also doing this as long as there are strict social distancing practices. And but there is an option for others who are really, really scared to go to the class to still go virtual or still go online. But there are just a lot of methods, and it's up to us how to explore our methods. That is becoming autonomous, because you do not need to be motivated by anybody else. But the other one is, but this is extrinsic. You see that? This is now the middle part, extrinsic motivation, because the driving force is coming from outside. It's not coming from the inside, okay? It's coming from the outside because you are looking at the vision of this school as important. And that is extrinsic motivation, because that is coming from the school. And you see that as coming from the school, and the school has already made a statement that it is important, and you also consider that important. Okay, so you're going to go. You do not need some rewards, or you do not need some punishment, because just because you are considering that the objectives of the school are important, then that should be it. The other one is transitioning into the integrated extrinsic motivation, a complete task alignment. You know for a fact that this is you. I believe that this school believes in continuous learning. I believe that this school is about modernizing learning techniques. And this is also my vision for myself. As an educator, this is also my personal value. So this is the very stage wherein you could see now the alignment of your values with the school's values. And this is the integration part. And you are now transitioning into becoming more intrinsically motivated. And this is the other extreme of the more motivated side. Intrinsic motivation. This is now the very stage that you are just so enjoying your teaching wherever you go, whatever modality, whichever environment that you're going to consider. You are just so much enjoy doing the task, and you are very, very interested in this particular transition. You are not necessarily seeing this as a stress, but you are enjoying changes because you're considering yourself as very adaptable, as becoming very flexible or agile. You know what? Agility is a skill which is not simply flexibility or adaptability. Agility is about being able to transition from your traditional approach to another approach, or to a more progressive approach, with the element of speed, meaning how quick are you to adjust. This is also applicable in terms of our adjustment to our students. Some students are very, very high performing. Some students are so serious. Some students are jokers in the class too. And how fast are you to transition from one hat to another, or from one teaching style to another? How fast are you? And that is all about agility. Now, let me present to you, and next slide, please. Let me now present to you a certain approach, which is called the learner-centered approach. And this is a tendency for us consultants, because I am also a consultant for the Personal Officers Association of the Philippines. I do consult for several organizations, different institutions, academic institutions, and sometimes I also do some speaking engagements in Bicol University. So for all the Bicolanas out there, hello. Some of my teachers are actually also watching. hello to all of you. You know what the tendency for this, sorry, this is just a side story, right? You know, last weekend, I kept in touch with my high school teachers, and I was just thanking every one of them because I was already looking forward to this meeting all the high school educators in the country. Now, this is a learner-centered approach, and I coined this because this is a model. Of course, I have yet to have this copyright or patent, and I formulated this, of course, this year, because this is actually a combination of various models. Now, click, please. Now, as you can see at the center, these are 3 students here, because we want to shift from becoming teacher-oriented to becoming learner-centered in terms of our educational style, in terms of the scholastic culture. What do we now become? Are we so much sensitive to the class? Because sometimes, you know, teachers are just saying, this is already my style of teaching, and this is the standard. This is what I learned from my classes before. And, you know, my teachers before also taught me about, this is also the style of teaching. But you know what, guys? You know why what we're saying that HR or managing people is the most difficult job, or more difficult job, if not the most difficult job? Well, it actually is a case-to-case basis, right? But it's just so difficult because people keep on changing. People are inevitable. People have different personalities, idiosyncrasies, and this is why you can see the links on the sides as well. This is the very bases of the models that I have combined here. First, you need to take a look at the competency levels of your students. This is now a fundamental. This is now this is now the very slide that addresses our objective on knowing the fundamentals and strategies of mindful and holistic teaching. How are we considering the uniqueness, and how do we now capitalize on the uniqueness of our students? First, we consider their competency levels. Some of your students are underperforming. Some of your students are also high performing. Competency is not as simple as knowledge. It's not as simple as skills. It's not as simple as attitude, but it's a combination of everything. Competency is a cluster of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, or the KSA, because it's related to the subject. It's a cluster because it can be addressed by training, by consistent teaching, and by other development interventions. It cannot just be addressed by a certain training or higher level of learning. No, there are just a lot of interventions. And later on, we will see that there are just learning styles. And in fact, this is what we see now on the right portion, the learning styles. Some people are just too visual. Some people need to see graphs, okay? Some people need to see colors. Some people need some imagination. You know, going back to my story back in high school that I was not really very good in math, or I was not so really motivated towards learning math because I wanted to imagine things. When I was learning science, and I hope my physics teacher is actually on here as well, on Zoom or live FB. When I was learning science, because it was so hard for me to see that, okay, these are formulae that I'm confronted with. So I needed to imagine things, even the letters and the numbers. And when I was confronted with X and Y, for example, like, okay, what do those letters mean? And why are they there? Why are they in a particular formula? They don't mean anything to me. And it is because my brain is all about words. My brain is all about communication, language, artistry, or people, more on the more realistic and human side. But I had that difficulty, but I learned because of imagination. I had to put it on visuals. I had to, you know, use some what we call mnemonic devices. You know, some of the techniques that you can actually take on in order for you to memorize these things or to become familiar with these concepts, frameworks, or formulae. Some people are like that. Some people would just like to read. These are visual people, would like to read or see or interpret graphs. But some people are auditory. They just want to listen. For example, you're very low in visual, but you're very high in auditory. I do not care about the graphs. For example, I am a student. I don't care about the graphs that I see there on the board or whatever writings that you put there on the board because I am auditory. I am very, very particular with what you say. Or maybe on a separate session, and this is also what I do with my semi-autistic students, and this is also because they also have to declare that they are the semi-autistic students. I spare time with them. I spare time for these special students, and I teach them because they are auditory. They're good in what they listen to. They need to hear the words perfectly, repetitively. These are auditory learners. Some learners are kinesthetic. They want to move. They don't want to be inside the classroom. They don't want to just, sit there, relax, listen. They do not want that. They don't have any patience for that. Some people are just like that. Some people would go out, would be outdoors. And this is why you see that in the future, there are a lot of people who are doing managerial work, becoming soldiers, or doing all these outdoors and all the legworks, because they want that. They want to do. They are doers. They are not just people who are good in memorization. People who are good in memorization might actually be taking up law in the future. And auditory people may in fact become good customer service representatives, or becoming in the front lines because they have a good facility or a good competency for becoming an interface between the organization and the people outside. People are different. You are lucky enough if you have an equivalent level or an equal level of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and this is in fact our very goal as educators, to tap that potential in every student. They need to be visual, right? Or if they're not visual, then you have to nurture that becoming visual, because in the future, it's not all the time that people will actually adjust to you. But we need to be aware of our students. We need to reflect as educators. Just think about this. Is my style more on for the visual learners, for the auditory learners, or kinesthetic learners? And what are the things that we did for the underperformers, right? And here comes our genuine concern for other people. Becoming mindful of your role. You need to be holistic. You need to take a look at your entire class. Not everyone is pitching in, doing some contributions to the class, especially during recitation, right? How do you approach now the underperformers? Do you need to talk to them? Do you need to spare some time? Do you need to schedule an appointment with their parents in order for them to be coached as well? Maybe those persons are having personal problems, and you need to be aware of these things. You don't need to be stalkers, but you need to be aware of the holistic situation, complete situation of the student. Why is the student not performing? Because, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, these are highly technical fields, right? How do you expect now a certain person who is underperforming can just easily get on board, can easily just adjust to your teaching style? And sometimes we have that ego. This is already my teaching style and you better adjust, right? The other consideration is the motivators. The lower right portion is the motivators. We've discussed earlier the motivational spectrum, right? Yes, that's the right, lower, yeah. Intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic would be the things that make you empowered. Empowered because you are given this particular job, a particular assignment, and you don't need any supervision. And this is also what we do in our students, right? How do we tap on the intrinsic motivation in students? We trust that the student can deliver. We trust that the student does not have to have an assistant. We trust that the student does not have a senior student to be guiding him. Or we trust that the student does not need frequent consultation with us, because the student is independent and the student has already learned a lot of skills which would make him independent, or not necessarily trying to consult you every now and then. Intrinsic motivation is about empowerment. It is also about engagement, meaning, are you ensuring that the students have the right facility? They have mastered the subject already. This is how we motivate people, because people can be engaged when they really know what they are doing, right? You become so joyful, and you're just doing all this particular assignment or this particular project with all smiles, because you really know about this. You have achieved already a sense of mastery in it. And the other aspect of intrinsic motivation is also commitment. You excel in this particular subject because you can see yourself in here, you can see your purpose in here, and you are being valued as well. And this is in fact also a challenge for most of the teachers when we welcome feedback from our students. People become more attentive to our lectures, to what we're teaching, if we value their inputs. But if we are just easily dismissing their inputs like, oh, you know what, that's wrong, or maybe some other time we can actually discuss it. But when students feel that they're being recognized, that you value their inputs, they become more committed to the subject, and that's still intrinsic motivation. Now we go to extrinsic motivation, and these are our external factors. Do you have a proper environment, or is it too hot inside the classroom, right? And you also need to seek feedback in terms of how you speak. Maybe your intonation is not too pleasant in the ears. Maybe you speak, you need to record yourself, and this is one technique. You need to record yourself, and you need to listen to yourself as well. And you need to listen to others' feedback as well. How am I in terms of my projection, my vocal projection? Am I clear? Some people, and you also need to, this is why when I'm in my class, I always check my students. Am I being heard from the back row? Do you have any special condition? Do you have any special condition in terms of who are nearsighted or are farsighted? Who have problems in terms of hearing? Who have problems in terms of walking, so that you could be situated somewhere closer to the door, especially when you go out for a pee break? So these considerations. And you need to extrinsically motivate your students by ensuring that all of these external environmental factors are fitting and are conducive for their learning. And as you can see here, there is actually a formula here that I've put up. Performance on the right side of the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. This is performance. The performance of students is equivalent to the function of their aptitude or their ability multiplied by motivation. So see, ability, their competency level, their skills level, their knowledge level, or their attitude level. It's not as simple as, I know for a fact that you have already known these things. Okay, you must be good. You must already be an achiever of this class, but it's not enough. You may, in fact, achieve some exponential success for that particular student if you tap on the M, because that is the multiplier. And M refers to motivation, especially intrinsic motivation. When your students feel engaged, empowered, and committed, it just brings you priceless results. Of course, there is a minus UF in the formula because these are the uncontrollable factors. For example, calamity, or such as this pandemic. It's something that is uncontrollable, and you need to consider them. So if you want to know more about this formula, you can actually also consult Campbell and Pritchard in 1976. That's talking about motivational theory. Now we go on to the other also important aspect, which is personalities, and you can also see that on the lower left portion here. Personalities refers to the temperaments of your students. Ocean, and this is an acronym. So this is now where I want you to listen very, very intently. Ocean is an acronym for O, openness. That is the first one. If students have developed this particular personality, that they're so open to the many changes in terms of their environment. Open students they can shift from a classroom setup to a virtual setup or to an outdoor setup. That is becoming open, or becoming open to different learning or teaching styles. C is for conscientiousness, okay? So once again, O is for openness, being open to the changes of your environment and also of your internal environment. C is for conscientiousness. Conscientiousness is becoming, or is defined as obedient to the rules, abiding by the policies, someone who is very organized, someone who follows steps, very procedural. You can actually refer this to right now our accountants, for example, who always refer to the international standards for accounting, or engineering people who have set standards, certain computations, etc., and other technical fields as well that are following such manual or a guidebook. And this talks about, so if you have students who are conscientious, you won't have any difficulty in trying to make them follow certain steps. For example, what is scientific method, right? If your students are not too high in conscientiousness, they would not follow the scientific method. there is a tendency that they would actually jump from one step to another, even if it's already written. So highly conscientious students will definitely follow that. And now we go to E. E is for extraversion. Extraversion. Some people are just, some of your students might actually be very loud, right? They have loud personalities. They're so joyful. They are the life of the party. They want the limelight. They are very sociable. But that does not mean that they are nuisance people. By the way, in these personalities, nothing is negative, okay? These are of equivalent footing, or equal footing. Now, becoming extroverted is more on, these are your students who are very high in absences, who are very, who are always late. This is the tendency according to study, and you can go to the particular reference that I put up here. It's by John Srivastava, which has studied about the big five personality. And this is what we call the big five. There are many, many personality tests according to the literature, but the literature is fixed in terms of saying that so far the big five is the most comprehensive because it has been tested or it has been based across continents. Now that is extroversion. So these are high in absences and usually late students, right? But how do you address that? Usually these people are very good in cramming, okay? Maybe some of the educators who are also here via live FB or on Zoom are also good crammers. Sometimes you don't do your manuals, right? Or lesson plans, as we call it, because you want to be spontaneous and you know for a fact that it's already in your head and you have already mastered this field, and therefore you are just highly extroverted because you're very spontaneous and then you know that you could relate to people. High extroversion is also a quality of a teacher and should be a quality of the teacher because it's about being sociable. You cannot be an introverted person if you are a teacher. So if you are a teacher and you are introverted, please exert some effort in trying to address that because you need to take on this particular extroverted personality. You really need to try harder to become an extroverted person because you need to relate to every person. And according to the study, every manager or every person who is supervising, who's coaching or mentoring other people needs to have an extroverted personality so that you do not easily get offended by people who are exhibiting certain characteristics that are most likely be offending you, but extroversion teaches you how to become more patient, on how to extend more, go the extra mile for these particular students who are especially exhibiting unique characteristics or unique learning challenges. So so that's O for openness, C for conscientiousness, E for extroversion, and A for agreeableness. Agreeableness. If students are just open and accepting of your instructions, you don't have any difficulty in trying to let them pursue a project. Hey, student, I need you to cooperate or collaborate with certain classmate. Oh, yes, ma'am, I'm going to do that. That is a very agreeable student. Some students are also thinking highly of themselves, especially the student leaders, right? Student leaders know their value. Student leaders know their competence. And sometimes they think that they can already lead, but they still need guidance. And this is why educators are here, especially for elementary and high school students, because they are minors, right? But agreeable students are actually just so easy to manage, especially when you are giving them certain directions. They will just agree. This is a very good quality of students. But the thing here is, if you have, for example, and this is now leads me to this last personality, which is neurotic. N would stand for neurotic. You know, all these neurons, all these nerves going on in your body. Neurotic would mean a person who is highly, I'm not sure how to put this up, but I do not want to make it sound negative, but these are persons who are usually anxious, okay? Usually worried about these things. And they usually get irritated when something is not happening in accordance with how they have planned it. Like, for example, you have organized a certain appointment for your entire group. You want to go to a movie, you want to go watch a movie, and this particular friend of yours did not show up, and you become so irritated, right? Have you experienced that? maybe, probably all of us have had. And this is a personality of neurotic people. And mind you, all of us, we have the tendency to become neurotic, to become agreeable, to become extroverted, to become conscientious, to become open. Highly neurotic people are not necessarily very agreeable people because they have their own belief systems and they are not easily penetrable. You cannot easily influence them. These are highly skeptical people, not too trusting people. But you know what? These are in the future field, in the future corporate field, these are the auditors, these are the policemen, highly doubtful of the many things that are happening in the environment and could easily spot on irregularities. So see, every personality is in fact very relevant to every field, and we can actually take advantage of that. There is no ideal personality here, but according to studies, most successful individuals have exhibited very high conscientiousness and extraversion. So that's C and E. But we haven't really tested the other personalities in other industries, right? Remember that these models, these theories, these concepts are just based on some limited sample. That's why they are theories and concepts. They are not absolute realities because they are just based on very, very limited sample, right? Even if it cuts across the globe, but it's still limited. Are Filipinos there in the particular study or sample? Maybe not, right? So most of these theories and concepts are Western, but we do not necessarily have to adopt completely everything. You know what the right attitude towards these things is when we just make sense of that particular concept or model and trying to apply it in our very own, trying to contextualize it. Okay? There is no absolutely good personality here. And it's just so hard for us to, by the way, there are personality tests, free personality tests on Google. You can check that up as well so that you can figure out which personality you are taking on. But better have it interpreted by a psychometrician. And better that we do not label people in accordance with their personality because we have those tendencies and it varies from situation to another. Okay? Now, we go to the next slide, which is on some of the stereotypes and biases that we have in order for us. But we need to challenge these stereotypes. And I was mentioning this in the very first slide that we have the tendency to have stereotypes because of the cultural influences. Our churches, our friends, even our parents have actually taught us a lot of realities, and these affect our judgments towards the world. And let me share with you some of these 12 compiled stereotypes and biases. Let me go on with them one by one. The first one is, the first stereotype or bias that you might have as an educator: I know everything, right? Oh God, we did not know everything. We have the tendency to believe that we have the monopoly of knowledge sometimes in the classroom, and the students are there to just receive. They are at the receiving end, but that shouldn't be the attitude. The second one is, I deserve respect. I am the teacher here. I should be called the professor or madam, or always with a sir. Or this is a very difficult one because our culture has actually taught us, yes, to become very respectful, respect the elderly, respect the ones in authority. But what is lacking in our culture is respect for the learners, respect for the younger ones, right? But we will go on to that a little bit later. But I hope this particular, I deserve the respect, I hope this does not get into our head. All these titles that we do have, and sometimes we're just too sensitive if we're not being called a sir or a ma'am or professor or an engineer or attorney, it all gets into our head. Because we have been taught that a particular success is about titles. We need to be doctors, we need to be teachers, we need to be lawyers. And this is the symbolism of success. But how about those who don't have any capacity to be educated, right? How about the good weavers of the tinalak in the provinces? How about the best farmers of Central Luzon? We do not know their expertise, but they deserve just the same respect. The third one, my style is okay and students just need to adjust. This has already been the style over the years and I am not willing to adjust anymore. And that is sad, right? That is particularly sad because remember your main client is your students and you need to adjust. Students are changing, they are human beings. Fourth, I can yell or physically punish for discipline. This is also our upbringing. That parents or elderlies or when we have already achieved that particular position of becoming powerful or in a powerful situation, it gives us some sense of entitlement of yelling at people or physically punishing people. And I hope this ends like right now, because no one has the right to do so. And we cannot just take advantage of their weak situation or of the situation that they are the learners and they are just at the receiving ends. The fifth stereotype is this can never go virtual. And this is, in fact, the protest of many teachers right now, because we have been used in terms of, face-to-face meeting our students. And of course, we miss our students so much. We want to see them again, right? It's not enough that we see them on camera, that we do all these online, we do all these virtual, but there is just some human touch that we miss. And as human beings, we would also always look for that. The sixth stereotype is I don't care about parents' role. And you do not want to talk to parents, especially if you are an introvert or a neurotic person, and you have the tendency of not really becoming very aware of the role of parents. Remember that the parents are the affirmers. When your students go back to their respective homes, their parents are the ones who need to confirm what they have learned or provide the affirmation, provide certain confidence, provide appreciation for whatever they're doing, etc., etc. And you need to know these things. You need to know whether they're still receiving this particular appreciation at home. As educators, remember your students, our students are spending a lot of time at school, and the main influencer is us, right? And we need to embody or model these particular values of nurturing, but we need to have a partner in their parents. We cannot just do this alone. The seventh stereotype is I need not talk to other teachers for my content. This is in particular the silo mentality that we're calling. That's SILOS. A silo mentality meaning this is my turf and I don't care about your turf. This is my turf and I'm going to do good about it and you don't mind about my teaching style, about my approach in terms of my turf. But no, we need to be more welcoming of constructive feedback. We need not to overlap and we need to be aligned. Some of our topics are already being taught in the other subjects, and some topics are already overlapping, and we need to be sensitive. We need to be talking to the other teachers so that we are all in sync, so that we are all harmonized. The other stereotype is that misbehaving students should get deductions right away. Oh my God. There should always be due process, for example, especially for students who are misbehaving. 9 is ethnic students need special assistance. Just look at that. We need to make them feel that they are of equal footing. We need to become more inclusive and more advocates of quality. The 10th is I will speak with students only in the finals. And this is what a lot of teachers are already lacking. The consistency of giving feedback. And some teachers just, do not want to be corrected or do not want to be seen, whether they are doing right or wrong, or they do not want to be really communicating with students. They don't have time for it. They also have problems at home that they need to deal with. 11th stereotype would be they don't need to see the breakdown of grades. That is also sad, right? Because people need to know that. 12 is that students need not grade my teaching. What do we say about that? Oh, good God. We will see their counterparts on these 12 behaviors of stereotypes and biases on the right side. So for the stereotype, I know everything, maybe we could replace that with my students and the books know something that I don't. Definitely, you don't have any monopoly of knowledge. For the stereotype on I deserve respect and I'm the one who deserves this respect, we think, or we should transition towards that belief that everyone deserves respect, even my students, and the way that they should be respected too. The third one is my style is okay and students should just adjust. No, remember the personality styles, remember the motivators, remember the learning styles that I told you about earlier, and remember their competency levels as well. Every person is unique, and we need to consider that. And it's a mutual relationship, okay? It's like if you want your students to be adjusting to you, you should also adjust to them. This is always a relationship. It always takes two to tango. It's always give and take. The fourth stereotype that we need to address, and the more or the better perspective on that, is that I will not abuse my power. I will not yell at my students. I will not do some physically punishing them just for the sake of discipline, just because I am in the authority. No, I will not abuse my power. The fifth one, or the better perspective of this can never go virtual, is that maybe there's another alternative. Maybe we could do it better. Maybe I just need to consult my fellow teachers. Maybe I just need to trust the Department of Education. Maybe I need to trust also the national government. All these things. Always be open to alternatives, because what if there comes a point that we really just have to stay at home and we never have the chance to go out again? We need to do something. I know that there are still a lot of factors that might affect it. Of course, technology is there, the provisions are there, the resources are there, and they need to be aligned. This is why our voice is really very important. It's also very important that we are represented in the policy-making bodies. The sixth one, the better perspective would be thinking that the parents are our partners, especially for these minors. We need to tap on the potential of parents. As we know, you need to update also the parents that this is already what we're doing right, especially advisors. If you are an advisor, I'm talking to you right now, I am appealing to you right now. Hope you are doing this, and I trust that you are already doing this. The seventh one is that teachers need to reintegrate and reunite. They need to talk. They need not to be selfish or think that this is my turf and I'm just the expert on this one. You just mind your mathematics, I am science. You just mind your technology, I am science. You just mind your mathematics, I am science. But no, let's talk. Let's synchronize and let's harmonize. The other one is due process is key. We just don't immediately punish students. Let us always think about the due process and fair practices. We hear out the students, what's wrong? Why did you behave this way? And what could make you behave better the next time? How can I help you? How can I assist you? And I hope we still exert that effort in trying to coach our students and trying to become more personal with our students. The ninth perspective that we can actually adopt is everyone should be seen on equal footing regardless. Whether you have, for example, PWD students, whether you have LGBTQ students, whether you have ethnic students, treat them as equal, but be mindful of their needs, of their unique needs, and make sure that you are, in your particular class, you are also nurturing that culture of inclusivity and diversity. The other one is you need to have regular feedback because it creates more impact. You know, the fact that the Fortune 500 companies all throughout the world, more likely 80% to 90% of the Fortune 500 since the 1980s have already fell off the top 500 because of the lack of coaching, because of the lack of people management skills, because a lot of these technical people, highly scientific, highly technology driven, highly engineering oriented, or highly mathematics inclined people, sometimes they lack the essential skills. They have the hard skills, right? We do not say that the people skills are soft skills. We rather term them as essential skills because in the very first place, their main client is a person, is a human being. And highly technical people usually have the tendency to overlook that, the human side and the essential skills of becoming more mindful about the people. How do they operate? What are their competency levels? What are their learning styles? What are their motivators? And what are their personalities? And the other one is students have the right to information. You need to provide them feedback. You don't need to surprise them at the end of the term, at the end of the school year that, hey, this is what you're getting. No. Make sure that you're in support of them all throughout. If you are observing some underperforming indicators, then be alarmed. Then take time to coach the person, provide feedback, and know the person much more deeply, and partner with the parents, partner with the advisor, and adjust to the learning environment and do something about the learning environment of the student. Do something about the other students who also need to adjust to that particular student who is also underperforming. This is just a challenge, yes, but it can be a very good opportunity for all of us to really test if we are mindful and holistic teachers. The other one is I welcome feedback for my development, and that is 12 perspective that we need to have. We welcome feedback for our development. We need to be open to that. We're not perfect. Students have the right to tell us how we're doing, and it's very important to receive feedback from them because they are the main clients. How are we to them? Are we effective teachers? How do we figure that out? You need to ask the students, how well did they learn? So we now go to the last slide, which is our key takeaways. Humility is key to infinite agility and learning. As teachers, since we have already reached that peak of success in terms of our competency as experts, and we do not just be confined to our role as coaching or mentoring or giving the learning, providing the learning, but we also need to be learners. Go back to that life wherein you're open to learning. And this is in fact one manifestation that you are open to learning because you are attending this webinar. You want to know more about how to rise above learning inertia, about stagnating, especially during this pandemic that we're not in our learning or teaching modes, how to make sense of this particular situation that we're all in right now. And it takes humility for us to just, level up and go further and always be mindful that there is always a room for improvement, even if we're already considering ourselves as experts. The second key takeaway is looking through internal, external, and aspirational lenses, because in this way, we make more informed decisions. We need to take a look at our angles, different angles. It's not enough that we're only looking into ourselves. We need to take a look at our competitiveness. If we are put in a more competitive situation, are we even ready? Can we still thrive? Especially in this virtual or digitalized version of our education, we need to translate our curricula into something that is more acceptable to our modern students. How are we welcoming of that? How do we see that external lens? And by becoming more aware of our internal external lens, what is now our aspiration for ourselves? How do we see ourselves in 5 to 6 years from now? What is our goal? And do we make sure that all these activities around us are in fact aligned with achieving that very objective? And the third key takeaway is that Joe Harry's window, from Joseph and Harry. We need to be aware about how others are also perceiving us. What is known to you, unknown to others. What is known to both of you and others. What is unknown to both of you and others as well. And what is hidden, and all of these quadrants in the Joe Harris window. You need to take into account all of these, and you need to welcome all of these. The fourth key takeaway, it's a VUCA world. It's already inevitable. It will always happen because uncertainties will always happen, complexities will always happen, ambiguities will always be there, and volatility is just inevitable. And the key is becoming agile, not just flexible and not just adaptable, but doing it with the element of speed. How quick are we to respond to the changes? The fifth key takeaway is teaching is essentially aimless if it's not learner-centered. We always be mindful about our client, our students. Are they learning well? How else will they learn better? The sixth key takeaway, there are certain stereotypes and biases because these are cognitive shortcuts. I may be able to think, I may be able to judge other students who are already like this because these are my stereotypes and biases. And question that, okay? Question your particular belief systems. Use the scientific method to your own belief systems as well. What is the basis for me when I say that this particular student still has an ability or potential to learn? What is the scientific method in order for me to have a complete picture of how these students can learn even better and be mindful of the learning styles, motivators, personalities, and competency levels? The seventh one is need to create more value-adding elements to coaching and mentoring. It's not enough that we are teaching them the technicalities of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They need to see its relevance and impact on the real scenarios, on their lives. When they grow up, they don't need to memorize all these formula, be familiar with all these concepts and theories, but they need to realize how they're going to make use of them, how are they going to make sense of all these learnings in their particular realities. Make them see the future, and make them develop that future, and make them realize how these learnings are in fact very relevant to their future endeavors as well. So those are the key takeaways, and I am now open to questions. Now turning you back to Marty. If you've got questions on the floor from live FB or Zoom maybe.
All right. Thank you, Kuya John, for your very elaborate discussion. So it's nearing lunchtime, so we will screen some of the questions because baka nagugutom na ang ating mga madam and teachers. So I think Kuya Jeff will have the first question from Zoom.
Okay, this is Jeff. So John, thank you so much for the content that you delivered. It's actually there's a multitude of very good points that you actually touched on, but to put things on the context of the current pandemic, how do we foster motivation and learning not only amongst teachers but also amongst our students? They would come in with traumas from this experience. How do our teachers prepare for that?
Sorry, Jeff, hello.
Hello?
Yeah, can you say that again, please? Sorry,
Yeah.
you were breaking.
Yeah. How do you foster learning and motivation amongst our teachers and students after this pandemic? I mean, they would come back to school with traumas. You know, they have experiences to manage. Their personalities are likely changed after this experience. So could you provide our teachers with some guidance as to how they can prepare for it?
That's right. Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Was that question coming from you or was it coming from the floor?
It comes from me, and it was also asked by a bunch of people. So I think
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is in fact a very critical aspect right now. But if you go back to the slide, please, on motivators, is that still possible? Yeah, on the motivational spectrum. Yeah, that's right. Slide 11. Yeah, slide 11. So if you go back to the motivational spectrum, so you need to be aware, every student or even every teacher has a different degree or has a different level of motivation. But how do you ensure that you know it? Stay connected. You remember the greetings wherein you just say, hey, stay healthy, or hey, stay safe. But you know what? The most important thing here is the advice that, hey, we need to stay connected, because that is only the very instrument that you can tap on in order for you to know the motivational levels of people. You need to be connected. Communication is key here in order for you to know the motivation. But you have also to remember your experiences with the students. So first, let's go to our students because this is our main client, right? How do we now ensure that there's still a motivational level? You stay connected with them. There are a lot of ways. You know, if these students of yours do not have any access to, for example, something online or on Messenger or Viber or any social media platform, you can probably call them up as well. Or if you are in one barangay, you can still, try to or text them, or just ensure that you know about these students. Partner with their parents of these students, and that is very important. They have different motivational degrees, and some of them have already amotivated. Some of them are thinking about, oh my goodness, how am I going to survive, and how am I going to go back to school? I don't even have allowances because my parents did not have their salaries because of the pandemic, right? So all of these things, you need to become aware. You need to become aware of the situation. And if you go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, these are the basics, and you need to address first the basics before you even get to that peak of what do you call that, of intrinsic motivation, of becoming more engaged, of becoming more empowered, of becoming still committed to the class, because you need to address these essentials, and you need to ensure that their households have that. So it's very important. Knowledge of their essentials are very important, knowledge of the building blocks. However, if you have that ability to still stay connected with them, well, for those of you who can text your students, for those of you who can call your students, for those of you who can actually capitalize on social media, I hope you're also staying or you can actually remind them of the previous lessons, because they have the tendency to forget about it, especially the anxious ones. They become more engrossed and they become more preoccupied on how to survive. But just small steps. We do not need to force them. Do not give them assignments. Do not give them tasks. This is not psychologically. This is also be advised by the American Psychological Association and even the Psychological Association here in the Philippines. We not to be sensitive about the motivations of students. We cannot just provide good assignments or projects to them. We need to be aware that we need to take one step at a time. So be connected with the parents, be connected with your students through various forms. Make sure that they keep track or they do not lose track of what they are learning. So you can also provide certain videos. You can also record yourselves, make sure that these videos reach them. There are just certain strategies that can actually top on so that they do not get to forget their lessons. What I do, for example, as an educator as well, is that I make sure that I provide quotations, I provide, reading, and I also do some web posts. And because we have a Facebook group, I give them certain reminders of our lessons, but I do not pressure them from from coming up with a hard assignment or certain projects, or so they need to team up with other classmates and they need to submit to me in a particular period of time. No, there's no much pressure, but it's just one step at a time. But I hope that for most of the teachers, because, you are here, you have virtual access, I hope you're also giving each other a pat on the back because you have this passion. Because, educating our people is about vocation, is about becoming compassionate and passionate about our students' learning. And I hope we're also getting in touch with our teachers, not just with our students, but our fellow teachers. Are we also motivated? And we need to get to the elements again of motivation, of how to ensure that they are engaged, empowered, and committed in the long run.
Okay, John, I think I just saw like a very interesting follow-up question to that. It's coming from Anna Lebs Gibbs Fernandez. And what she was asking was about how the teachers can actually empower the parents in motivating their children. Because I think, since you mentioned something about the connection between teachers and parents, I mean, how should they go about that? Could you provide some just a couple of specifics? I know we have like a bunch of, we have a long list of questions, but if you could offer a couple of examples, that would be great.
Okay. Now, the concept of empowerment, if you go back to the resources that I've actually put on in this slide, the concept of empowerment, first of all, as an element or a dimension of intrinsic motivation, is when you ensure that the students, but in this particular example, the parents, because the question is for the parents and how to empower the parents. So the very concept of empowering parents is you have to ensure that you trust them. You have to be confident in their ability to guide people. It starts with the awareness of the capability of the parents to guide and coach and mentor your students as their children. And if you do not have that knowledge of the parents in the very first place, and that's going to pose a lot of difficulty for you. So this is why it poses a lot of challenge, and this is why the very secret to empowering even on or tapping on the partnership with the parents is when you know deeply your client, your main client with your students. You need to know the ability of the students, how they are coping, and you need to know how they are being affected by their parents. You need to know the role of their parents when they go back home. But since right now, and we are all in the midst of the pandemic, and given that, for example, you do not know anything about how their parents can actually be partners for guiding their students, you need to start connecting with them. You need to do the extra mile. There is no other way but communicate with the parents. There is no other way but to provide them some tips. If you are too good about coming up with certain videos or learning or instructional materials for students as well, you also need to come up with those certain materials for the parents at the level of their understanding. We know for a fact that some of the learning degrees or the readiness of parents may not necessarily be on equal footing And you know, some of them, especially in the rural areas, some of them, you know, their children are even more educated than their parents, and we need to recognize this. But it's always it's just in the very dimension of equal footing when you realize that their parents can have that capability, that you can empower them, that you can entrust the guidance or the coaching for their students or for their kids. So it starts with the awareness. So you should have done that assignment at the very onset in the classroom before we even went on ACQ. But if you did not do that assignment, you now need to start getting in touch with their parents. So I'm pretty sure the HR of every school, or you as an advisor, if you happen to be an advisor, or you need to connect to the advisor, if they have a directory, if they have the contact details of the parents, please do get in touch with them. You know, a simple kamustahan, what is happening in their kids, how they're learning, how they're coping with the situation. But we need not become very pressure-oriented, that we are always following up on the academic side. But we need to start first with the essentials. How are they coping with the situation? Do they have enough resources? You need to become more human first before you can even sense the readiness of the parents. We need not threaten also the parents, like especially if they are not educated themselves. So our approach should be, when we already stay connected with them, our approach would be, you know, how do we ensure that our students are getting enough sleep, especially now that it's summer and it's just so hot? And how do we ensure that our children are not necessarily overexposed to the internet? And how are they affected as well in terms of all this negativity and on social media? So we need to start connecting with the parents, and we need to, but it's not supposed to be a secret. Your students should also be aware of this, okay? We need to be transparent in all of our communications, but not everything. Of course, there are certain things that only the parents and the teachers should know, but you need to be connected. So start with having that directory of the parents. If your HR, if the advisors do not have that directory, or if your guidance counselors do not have directory, by the way, you can also tap on the ability of the guidance counselor to do so. And most likely they have that platform to connect with the parents as well. Come in touch with the barangays, okay? The barangays definitely have the list of parents or the contact details, especially if we're talking about far-flung areas. Just be aware of their contact details, and you need to, you know, have it one step at a time in connecting with them, not threatening the parents because they do not have the ability as yet, but just sensing if they could in fact provide certain guidance and provide some rekindling of the learning potentials of their kids.
All right. So Kuya John, so in order for us to ask more questions, please limit your answers to 2 or more sentences, 2 to 3 sentences.
All right, thank you, Marty, for reminding.
We have a lot of questions actually, and I will ask one of our Zoom participants to ask his question. His name is Sir Daniel Chavez. Can you go online, please, and ask your question?
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Sir Daniel. Are you here? Okay, so mukhang nag-off na siya ng mic, but I will ask his question. As an educator too, how will you extrinsically motivate the learning educators to pursue professional growth amidst the current crisis or soon-to-be educators?
Sorry, was that extrinsic or intrinsic?
Extrinsically.
Extrinsically.
Yeah.
Okay. As an educator, how do I ensure that there is extrinsic motivation towards my fellow educators?
How will you extrinsically motivate the learning educators to pursue professional growth amidst the current crisis?
Okay, Well, thank you very much. This is the webinar in itself. It's something that is external or extrinsic to all of the educators. This is already something that can motivate you. Remember that when you know what you're doing, and if you are already aware about how to rise above learning inertia, and this is the very topic of this webinar, this increases your knowledge or your skill or your competence of this particular field. And when you are a master of this particular field, it leads to engagement. Remember our discussion earlier about the intrinsic motivators, but that is intrinsic motivators. Now, becoming more aware of what's happening in the world, as certain examples that I have already cited earlier, giving you certain learning strategies, this is something that is already external to you and something that could motivate you further because you are already acquiring that particular knowledge coming from outside. Now, as an educator, I could not control everything that surrounds you, of course, and I can only do so much. And the right approach, as psychologists would always advise any person, is that you only focus on your locus of control or your sphere of control. So if I could control the information that I give out to my fellow educators, such as this webinar, then I would actually capitalize on it, fill it with all inspirational lessons, coming up with all these strategies and techniques for educators. This is already something that could extrinsically motivate them.
Okay, so another question from Facebook. This is from a DepEd supervisor. Her name is Maria Merlina Beltran Josue. How can we bring back the respect we had before to our dear teachers today? Because of child protection policy, teachers are afraid to curtail bad behavior of pupils in class for fear that they may be dismissed outright.
Oh, okay. Sorry for that reaction. It's a little bit sad if you know these things, if you interpret them as barriers. But you know what? These policies, they are placed there for everybody else. Just imagine this. If you're also educators and if you also have kids who are enrolled in this particular school, you also do not want your fellow teachers in that particular school where your kids are enrolled to be also abusing their powers. But you know what? This child protection policy is not necessarily trying to curtail everything, especially the disciplinary actions that are supposedly also enshrined in the powers of educators. Because as educators, yes, we could also impose certain disciplines, but in the right way. So the child policy is about child protection policy is also about due process. If we're not violating anything, then we should not be afraid of anything also. And it should also harmonize with our respective policies at school. As educators, for example, DepEd should also talk to this respective principals and respective teachers and other educators as well. And they can in fact brainstorm on certain implementing rules and regulations. The policy is there, yes, but in terms of implementing it should also be customized to every scenario. Some students are not necessarily very welcoming of this particular policy, or some of the provisions in the policy may not necessarily have to be completely applicable in a certain cultural setup. So you need to customize and you need to harmonize, but without compromising the main tenets or the main principles of that particular policy. So it's all about bringing up or raising it to the authorities, on the decision-making authorities, about how else we would like to ensure that people are indeed ethical and doing the etiquette and are not violating any policy without also compromising their right to a safe education. So it's all about communication once again. It's all about partnering with the decision makers, and it's all about knowing better on how to approach. And if you think that it curtails your the way that you are disciplining your students or imposing discipline to your students, maybe it's also about time to revisit our style, because it's a changing environment. And why is the government considering this? Because it talks about human behavior. It talks about best practices also from other countries, although we have a different culture, but it's something that we need to embrace because it's something that has already been tested across all academic industries as well.
Okay, thank you, Kuya John. Actually, this will be the last question, and this is with respect to the prior question, or in relation to the prior question. This is from Joyce Luna. What should be the proper approach for the students who are humiliating teachers when trying when trying to give their knowledge to the class, since we are expected to learn as well from our students. So
Okay, that is a very good question. Of course, I think almost all educators have encountered students like this. But you know what? The very first thing that we need to keep in mind is that what is the intention of the student? Does the student have the intention to humiliate us? Or is it us? Or is it our ego because we are the teachers and we should be the sole source of education, sole source of knowledge or skill in this class setup? We need to welcome people who are highly extroverted. Remember our discussion earlier about knowing the personalities of our students? And some people might be highly extroverted. Some people might want to take the leadership role. But how to approach that? First, you need to talk to the person. You need to make the student aware of how you felt, okay? You need to make the person feel that you felt bad about it, but you are not judging the intention of the student. So you need to ask the student, why did you have to say those things? And why was your motivation? What were your personal agenda in making yourself highlighted in the class? Because that, in fact, a little bit humiliated me, but I'd like to hear it from you as well. So we cannot immediately judge whether that was the intention of the student. Maybe the student was just so passionate, and maybe the student was just so excited to share about his particular learning. And we as educators, especially these students are minors, so they need to be guided. But we need not be immediately slighted with this particular behavior. If it's already going overboard, and if you think that that is worth some administrative discipline or some student discipline, then go through the due process, right? If there is some, you go back to the ruling in your school. Is there something in your school that tells that students can get punished when they do these things? But why don't you first exhaust all the things that you have at school? Why don't you subject the person first to your personal mentoring? Maybe you need to nurture first your relationship with that student and know the intentions of that student. And if it doesn't work, then escalate it to certain guidance counseling. And if it does not yet get resolved, then escalate it to some disciplinary thing. What's important is that you achieve a certain harmony in your class, but as an educator, you also need not to become judgmental, and you also have to hear out all the students and employ due process for everyone in the name of fairness.
Okay, thank you, Kuya Jan. I think we will cut the question and answer portion there. I will get back to you so that they can ask questions on your personal account or on your email if they have questions. But let me just promote first our upcoming events for the Filipino Science Hub. So we have an ongoing essay writing competition for science and STEM teachers. So anyone can join. Junior high school or senior high school. The publicity material is already uploaded in our Facebook account, so please do visit our Facebook account. And we will also have our second webinar. So this will be an open forum, an online kapihan with UP professors, ensuring readiness of senior high school STEM graduates for university curricula. And we have invited speakers from different fields so that they can speak from experience how they are coping with the K-12 program in the university. And also we will have a lecture or a study material. It will be a reintroduction to chemical equilibria by our founder, Dr. Jeffrey Camacho Bungkin. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right, so I'll give it back to Kuya Jan so that he can give you his contact information in case you have any questions.
There you go. So thank you very much, Marty. Thank you also for facilitating the questions. You know, it was really too hard to make the answers concise because it's something behavioral and there is no absolute answer to every question. So I was trying really to contextualize it. But just in case you're interested in terms of the other areas of expertise that I have, these are it. So you can see coaching and mentoring, motivational performance, strategic management. So if you're interested, and you can just communicate with me via LinkedIn, Messenger, Facebook, or even Twitter or Instagram if you also want to follow me there. I also post some of my quotations there, some of my learning thoughts, and I also get invited by various universities here in the Philippines. I also get invited internationally in different central banks and different industries. And if you're interested, then I most welcome them, and we can communicate via these contact details. And I think posted there my email address. So I just want to thank you everyone for your time attending this webinar. I hope you learned something from me, and I hope you could carry all these learnings with you wherever you would go. And I wish you all the safety and health, and stay connected, especially with your students, with your fellow teachers, and also the parents who are definitely your partners in nurturing your students. Thank you. Thank you very much.